Hi everyone, it's time for the third episode of this series. So in the first one, we had Horatio, who shared with us his tactics in creating successful Google Ads campaigns for the pest control industry. And then in the second episode, Helen revealed how accountants can use content effectively in order to attract new customers. And now, for this interview, we have Marilisa joining us. She's an expert in digital marketing for businesses in the healthcare industry. Marilisa, thanks for joining us today.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, in fact.
Please tell us a few things about you and your agency. How do you work with companies?
Sure. So I am the co-founder and co-owner of a company that has a digital marketing company that has a presence in London, UK, and in Milan, Italy. And we work with different verticals in each of these countries, but mainly we tend to work with healthcare companies. So say a typical dentists, different types of doctors, some therapists, health coaches, so everything to do with the healthcare industry. And also we work with other types of consultants, but we tend to focus on healthcare mostly. And we do lead generation and customer lifetime value optimization for these companies. So what that means is that in addition to doing your typical Facebook ads, and we build their funnels and all the things that we are very familiar with as digital marketers, we also take a more holistic view. So we look at their sales processes, their internal SOPs, client retention systems, to make sure that not only they acquire new customers, but also that once they have acquired a customer, they can retain it and they can monetize that lead or their prospect, that customer, as much as possible, if that makes sense.
Okay, and how different is the process you create and follow for different professions?
It depends. So for example, the kind of process, so starting even from the funnel in the ads, follow-up sequences, sales optimization that we would use for, say, a dentist is very different from what we would use for a health coach. There is, to an extent, there is a lot more that goes into the marketing for a health coach, for example, than it does for a more, say, straightforward kind of service as would be a dentist. Everyone needs a dentist, if that makes sense. Not everyone understands how beneficial hiring a health coach can be. So it's a completely different process. So, I would even consider them different verticals, even though they are both in the healthcare industry, if that makes sense. So yeah, they range very much.
Totally, makes a lot of sense, actually. So what are we going to talk about today? Do you have any specific niche or results you'd like to share with us?
I have plenty. I would say that probably what your audience would benefit the most from is understanding the typical mistakes. And in terms of results, we've generated plenty. We've been in the industry for a very long time. I've been doing digital marketing for 18 years, not necessarily in the healthcare industry. So, in terms of results, there's many different types of results that we've driven. Things like, we've generated on a consistent basis a return on ad spend of, say, 820%, all the way up to 1200%. So the kind of ROAS that we've driven is, it's quite extraordinary, because I don't know about you, but if someone tells me, look, give me a pound or a euro or a dollar and I will give you back 12, I'd be very happy to oblige, if that makes sense. So in that respect, as you can see, my ring bell is going off, but never mind.
No worries.
Says the joys of lockdown, right? You have to be in the house and homeschool your children, can't go to the office, your doorbell goes, So in terms of the more high ticket kind of services that we promote, we have, for example, we've driven sales calls for products or services that were priced at, say, 5K, 6K, 7K, so very high ticket products. And we've been able to drive sales calls as cheap as, say, $40, 40 GBP, depending. So there are some really extraordinary results that you can drive with, digital marketing funnels, but even more so, and this is my point, even more so when you really look not just at the client acquisition process, but also at how you monetize your leads and your customers when they come in. I think that that's really where most healthcare companies, regardless of the kind of company, really go wrong, because there's so much focus, particularly in the digital marketing industry, there's so much focus on get the client, right? Get the client. But then what companies and brands do when they do get the client, that's a completely different story. And not many people talk about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I've heard the same from Orazio on the first episode. And Orazio suggested that a company should be able to handle clients correctly in order to start generating more. Is that your opinion as well? I mean, should you reverse engineer the process and start from, closing at bottom of the funnel and work your way up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is, in fact, when people ask me, what are the typical mistakes that people make, brands make, and this is not just in the healthcare industry, because as I said, we also work with a number of different verticals as well, even though we specialize in this. And I see it across the board every time. So, you will go to the average, even when it comes to digital marketers and agencies, they will always give you all these strategies in terms of how you're going to generate new customers and new leads, but no one speaks about how to first of all hit your warm audiences. So for example, with us, when we create a new campaign, whether it's a webinar or a training or whatever that might be, or just your typical campaign for, say, I don't know, Invisalign or dental implants, whatever that might be, we always take that strategy and hit the brand's warm audiences first, because they're the easiest to monetize. And that's where you really see ROAS, a ROAS of, some ROASes that when you look at them and you think, is that even possible? Yes, it is possible, particularly when you're hitting warm audiences first. They are just such a stroll in the park to monetize. It's unbelievable. And yet a lot of marketers just neglect to do it. They start hitting cold audiences. And of course, that's something that you have to do, because there's only so much monetization that will come out of your warm audiences if you don't keep bringing new blood into your funnels and into your brand's universe. But by the same token, why not monetize your warm audiences first and foremost? Because they're easy, they know you, they trust you, they're ready to buy, they're just hot. So there you go.
So it all comes down to targeting. I mean, laser focused targeting and identifying the correct audience.
Absolutely. And again, if you, when you start by not only targeting your audiences, but really looking at who they are. And again, people talk about ICAs and understanding your ICA. And yet, what I do find is that when we acquire a new client, and we send them all our onboarding documents, and we ask them for the ICA, and we have a list of over 100 questions that we ask them. Most of them don't even know who their ideal customer is. And again, this is something that goes for the health coach as much as it goes for the dentist. They don't know even what their positioning is. And obviously their positioning is very strictly related to their ICA. So yeah, it's actually quite sad. There's so many digital marketers, or marketers in general, don't even pay attention to this very crucial stuff. And then they wonder why the campaigns don't work.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from a lot of people in your industry. It's really a pain point. Let's talk about the healthcare firm. At what stage can a company start doing marketing? Start slowly investing on ads. What should their first step be?
So I would say, generally speaking, with us, what we do find, and this is going to be slightly controversial, is that from an agency standpoint, the clients that tend to get the best results are the ones that are already hitting consistent six figures already. This, in addition to the fact that, quite frankly, we don't like working with clients that have, that don't have that kind of level of income, because we find them, a little bit more emotional in that response, and because, as you know, digital marketing can be a bit of a roller coaster. There is a learning curve. So, in my opinion, if you are a company that is really struggling to make money, then you should focus on, again, your positioning, fine-tuning your services, and making sure, first and foremost, that whatever it is that you're offering is actually something that your market wants. Because if you're going into, for example, if a client were to come to us and say, okay, look, we're really struggling, we're going to give you this money, please can you create a campaign that you can monetize, that we can monetize in the space of 1 month, I will have to say, look, there is a learning curve and there is a testing period that goes into any kind of marketing activity. So if you're really struggling for money, I really recommend that you raise some money first so that you're in a safe space to allow for that testing. Because when you're really in a space of need and scarcity, it's really hard to even test the campaign properly if you don't have a testing budget, if you don't have. That said, in many cases, for example, if you're a dentist, it's a very straightforward monetization process. So, you know, it's very hard. It's not very hard to monetize your ads and to get to ROAS. But if you have slightly different service offerings, then I would say, you know, allow at least for a couple of months worth of, you know, budget, agency budget, campaign budget, so that we are able to actually test, because it's in your interest as a client for us to be able to optimize as much as possible and test as much as possible so that we can get the best results possible, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure. Where should the testing budget be around?
That very much depends. Again, you know, if you're a small dentist, dental practice, for example, and you come to us and all you have is, say, about 5K, and you're able to spend 5K or even 3K over the space of 2 months, because again, it's a very straightforward kind of funnel that we create, and we know what works and what doesn't. You know, that's perfectly sufficient. If you are, on the other hand, for example, a health coach, which I can't think of two things that are so different, then I would say you will need, you know, it's more of a personal branding attempt, if that makes sense. So there's a lot more that goes into the testing for a health coach than it does for the testing for a dentist. That is, again, very straightforward. So if you're a health coach, for example, I would say you need to come to us knowing that you're happy to let go of, say, 5K worth of testing just to test, so that we know exactly what's going to work for you, because every health coach is different. Unlike, again, a dentist or a physiotherapist, or, you know, someone that offers a very straightforward service.
Okay. Let's talk about the specific aspects of marketing that you mainly specialize into. Let's pretend I'm a dentist and I want to start investing my budget on digital marketing. Where do I start?
So it very much depends. Obviously, different marketers will tell you different things. So there is no right or wrong answer. What I will say is, if you're offering a service that is that people tend to look for when there's an emergency, then, for example, let's think about emergency dentist treatments, right? So if that's what you're looking to promote, and I was going to say, so for example, outside of the healthcare space, so things like plumbers or anyone that people will need, hey, today my boiler's broken, so therefore I need a gas engineer, right? Or I need a plumber, whatever, because my pipes are burst. Equally with emergency medical services or medical aids or whatever that might be, then you're better off looking at Google Ads, because naturally what someone will do is they will open their laptop or get on their mobile phone and just look for that service on Google. On the other hand, if you're offering something that's a little bit high ticket and something that's more optional as opposed to a necessity here and now today, then I would say that Facebook ads, because of the targeting capabilities, because it is so sophisticated, and you can target people even by if their spouse's birthday is coming up, right? So think about services like Invisalign, right? And Invisalign is, you know, it's I wouldn't say it's overly expensive, but, you know, it is over 1K. So it's very easy, for example, to position it as a present for a spouse. You know, gift her with a beautiful smile for her birthday, right? So this is not the kind of targeting that you can do on any other platform. Facebook is very sophisticated in that respect. So anything that is a bit of a luxury, you're better off looking at Facebook ads. Anything that is that has some urgency, an element of urgency or necessity, then many times you might want to look at Google Ads, if that makes sense.
Let's stay in the Facebook ads. So how do you exactly target First of all, how do you decide whom should you target? And then how do you actually implement that targeting on Facebook?
So that's a question that requires about 4 hours worth of training. In terms of the targeting, to be quite honest, one of the mistakes that a lot of even professional marketers make is that they don't understand that there is a huge element of trial and error involved when it comes to fine-tuning, so nailing and fine-tuning your targeting on Facebook. Sometimes, actually very often, you find yourself in a position where, and this is something that I hear over and over from our Facebook ad managers that we have on team, they will hit the ground running and they're like, yes, this audience is just a no-brainer for this kind of product or service or brand or whatever, and they just hit the ground running. They are so confident, and then guess what? That's the audience that does the worst. And then there's the audience that no one would have put a penny or a cent or whatever on, and guess what? It's the one that's killing it. So there is, of course, you will always start by doing your research, because you have to make some educated guesses to start with. And you know, as a seasoned marketer, you tend to guess what will work, but always brace yourself for surprises, because you know, with all the research in the world, you will never know until you actually flick that switch on your Facebook campaign and you leave it to run for a few days, and then you very often get a bit of a reality check in terms of how much guessing you can actually do when it comes to these things with all your experience. So research is obviously paramount. It helps, I think, when you're working with marketers that focus on a specific niche, because obviously they know the niche inside out. But with all the research and all the experience and all the previous solid data points and whatever that you might have, it is sometimes a case of just testing. And then, you know, and the great thing with Facebook ads and of course Instagram ads, which are effectively the same thing, is that the process of input and output in terms of feedback is very fast. You can assess very quickly what's working and what's not working, unlike other means of traditional advertising, but even digital advertising. So Facebook it's I wouldn't say instant, but it's quite quick in terms of, you know, you input the settings and the audiences or whatever that might be, and then it doesn't take that long before you can actually ascertain whether it's working or not working, and then you can adjust as you go.
And that was my next question. I mean, how long should I wait in order to understand if my campaign, if it's successful or not? When should I stop it?
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Well, this is probably a question that my Facebook ads managers would be better placed to answer. But generally speaking, we always leave a campaign to run at least for a few days, at least for 2 or 3 days before we even start making any decisions whatsoever. It will again depend on a number of different factors. So, but generally speaking, one of the things, and I see this when we hire new Facebook ad managers, we're always hiring, and you know, we because we're expanding still very quickly despite COVID, and so one of the mistakes that I see junior ad managers make all the time is that they tinker and they fiddle during the first stages too quickly, and they don't give the algorithm time to optimize. So yeah, of course, the proviso to that is that you need to know what you're doing when you're setting up the campaign, because if you don't know what you're doing, then you know, there's no point in leaving it to run because you're just wasting money. But providing there's a solid setup, then you have to leave it to run for at least 2 or 3 days before you make any decisions.
Okay, totally makes sense. So marketing, of course, involves a lot of different services. It involves SEO, content, paid ads. How do you align all those stuff? I mean, when you initially start with a client, how do you decide which tactics you should use, and where do you capitalize on?
So generally speaking, we specialize mostly in Facebook ads and Instagram ads. We do offer SEO and Google ads and YouTube ads and all those things. I would say that, again, if you're offering luxury products or services or treatments, then your best choice might be to go with Facebook and Instagram ads as your core platforms, and then use I know there's a lot of changes that are coming on over the next few months and years, but generally speaking, you're better off using, if you have a limited budget and you have to make choices, then you're better off going with Facebook ads and then using the other platforms for retargeting and remarketing only. Again, you know, as I was saying earlier, if you're offering something that people are more likely to look for on Google, then of course, you know, it makes sense for you to hit your Google ads first. SEO is something that I would recommend anyway as a background service, because you know your website SEO is not dead, despite what a lot of Facebook ads, and I am a Facebook ads marketer, but I don't agree when I hear people say that SEO is useless and there's no point, because we still have people coming to us via a simple organic Google search. So SEO is something that if you have the budget, I would recommend every brand, every company, every dentist, medical, whatever practice to implement if they have the budget. So yeah, there's no easy answer to that, but I hope this gives some sort of indication somehow.
Yeah, sure. So let's get back to Facebook and Instagram ads. In your opinion, what's the hardest thing to nail? Is it copy? Is it targeting? Is it maybe the creative?
For Facebook and Instagram ads?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's evolved. So the algorithm is getting more and more sophisticated. So before, I would say, if you asked me this question a couple of years ago, I would say your audience. At the moment, Facebook, even with open targeting or near open targeting, the algorithm is actually really good at nailing your audience if you give it enough space. Sometimes not. I would say that at the moment, what's really hot is the creative. So if you really imagine, if I had someone that if you were asking me what's the one thing that's going to make a huge difference to the quality, to the performance of your ads, I would definitely say you're creative, because at the moment, consumer behavior is evolved quite a lot recently, and people have been they are constantly bombarded with ads. So the more something looks native, and the more you can create something that either looks native or it's really entertaining or catches people's attention, that's what's going to determine how your ads go, providing that all the rest of the setup is as it should be. So yeah, I would say definitely the creative, because you know what used to work some time ago in terms of creative does not work anymore. And I would also say copy, but the creative is what catches people's attention right away. So I would definitely go with creative.
And how do you structure your Facebook ads? Do you invest a part of your budget in remarketing, or is it only pure? Yeah.
Yeah, always. Of course, if someone comes to us that's never run ads, Facebook ads, we would leave the audience to build before we create middle of funnel and bottom of funnel ads. But generally speaking, it's something you would be leaving money on the table if you didn't do that as a marketer. It's just, yeah, it's unthinkable for us. It's just a no-brainer.
Okay, since you mentioned this is a tactic to leave money on the table, what are the other mistakes you often see from companies when it comes to advertising?
Yeah. So I don't even think that the biggest mistake is to do with advertising as such. I think it's to do with, again, as I was saying earlier, with people, with brands or practices, whatever that might be, internal processes. So lack of follow-up, the communication channels that have not really been implemented and or optimized. That things like, there are some companies that come to us that don't even have reminders. So for example, they are spending all this money to generate either sales calls or appointments or whatever that might be, and they don't have a reminder system in place. They don't have a follow-up system in place. So they will have sales calls. They will not remind people that they've booked a sales call, or obviously they won't call it a sales call. So call it a consultation, discovery session, whatever it might be. They don't remind them that they've booked it. After they've had that sales conversation, they don't even follow up if the person doesn't buy. If they follow up and people still don't buy, they don't try and sell them a different service. So I would say that actually the biggest mistake that businesses make is with their internal processes. And this is why when clients come to us, when we have sales calls, we always make it very clear that we're not just a marketing agency. We are a customer lifetime value optimization company, which means that we look at everything. We will even look at how long it takes. For example, for dentist practices, we will even look at how long it takes on average when they get an inquiry for the reception staff or whatever the relevant staff member is to pick up the call, to pick up the phone, should I say, and call them. So things like that, because of course, if you call a lead right away, within 5 minutes, or if you call a lead after 2 days, it's going to make a huge difference to how hot and motivated and high intent the lead is. So I like to look at these things as a holistic process, as opposed to just advertising or marketing or whatever you want to call it. It's a 360-degree approach that really is going to yield the best results.
I remember last year it was a hot topic, the sales and marketing alignment. It still is a hot topic because you see companies investing a lot on marketing, and they express a very nice message on the internet and all channels, and then suddenly when you contact them, it's a whole different story. It's like you were in a shiny place full of unicorns, and suddenly you're in the dark place with a boring guy.
It's interesting because obviously, because of what we do, whenever I engage on a personal level with a service provider or with a brand or whatever that might be, when I'm the customer or the client, there are times when I sit there and I think, aside from the, oh my goodness, what are you doing? But I also think, wait a second, do you actually want my business or do you not want my business? Because actually from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look like you do. If that makes sense, because their processes are just so awful. So it's just so very important because as I said, as a business, we spend so much money in generating leads, and then we just leave them to rot, or almost. It's actually quite a shame. So I would definitely encourage business owners to not just look at the customer acquisition framework and models, but also to look at the long-term monetization of the prospects, leads, customers, whatever that might be.
So a good idea for them is to look at the percentage that their leads are closing and going down the funnel. So if you have a nice percentage going from top of the funnel to middle funnel, that's fine. But if you have leads that are interested, but they're not converting to customers, then there's something bad going on and you have to look into it.
Yeah, exactly. And also looking at the customer lifetime value. So even when you've acquired the customer, how long do they stay? How many different services or treatments or products, depending on what you're selling, do they actually buy? There's obviously, we can sit here and geek out on the stats as forever. But there's a number of different things that you can be looking at, and you have to be looking at if you really want to make sure that your business thrives. Again, as we always say, it's a lot easier to retain the customers that you have than it is to acquire, both from a financial point of view and from an energetic point of view in terms of how much effort it takes. It's a lot easier to retain an existing customer than it is to acquire a new one. So why not focus on both, I would say, and make sure that the customers that you have acquired keep buying over and over and over and over again, and also look at the value of each interaction, each purchase. Because again, one of the mistakes that I see, even when I look at top of the funnel marketing activities, is that I see a lot of people running Facebook ads for low ticket offers. So for example, or worse, free. Unless it's being used as a lead generation mechanism. But generally speaking, what I do find, for example, for dentists, that whenever we've tried running campaigns such as discounted teeth whitening or free teeth whitening or whatever, it's a lot harder to monetize those leads, because not only because of the value of the first point of contact, but also because sometimes by doing that, and there are a lot of exceptions, like with everything marketing related, but generally speaking, you tend to attract low intent customers than you would if you were promoting, say, something a little bit more high ticket as, I don't know, Invisalign or dental implants or whatever, just to stay in the dental niche, if that makes sense. Of course, there are plenty of exceptions to this. But, generally speaking, it's always a good idea to look at what you're promoting, how often, and are you really making the most of your customer lifetime journey? Are you even, creating a lifetime? Some people don't even have a customer lifetime journey, but even when you do have it, are you actually making the most of it? Has it been planned out strategically to really monetize your leads or your prospects and your new customers the most efficiently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the higher the acquisition cost is going up, the more important it is to retain and upsell to your current customer, because you've already spent a lot of money to acquire that customer. Why not get the most out of him?
Exactly. And providing you, as long as you're offering a good, valuable service, then there is nothing, there's nothing wrong with trying to get as much, I guess, to just put it as it is, to get as much money out as possible out of your customers, because you're actually providing a service that they need. So there is nothing wrong with trying to really optimize the customer lifetime value. Because I hear that all the time, you're telling me that I need to try and squeeze as much money as possible out of my customers. Well, actually, that's exactly what I'm saying, because they need your services. So by all means, offer it to them and make sure that you're both happy.
So let's talk a bit about seasonality. Are there any seasonal offers that you're taking advantage of in specific periods over the year?
It really depends. That it is very much dependent on the vertical that you're working with. So what we have found is actually in the medical niche or vertical, it's been surprisingly resilient to the whole COVID situation, for example, and it is surprisingly resilient to seasonality in general, even at normal times. There are, of course, hotter periods, even with medical services, particularly when we're talking about cosmetic services. January being one of those, for example, new year, new me, new life, I want to whiten my teeth or whatever. There are, before the holidays, before the summer, again, particularly for cosmetic treatments. Again, the same doesn't apply to more routine services, if that makes sense, because if you need other things, if you need, I don't know, a scale and polish, for example, not that we will promote a scale and polish, but if you need it, you need it. But yeah, so we don't think that seasonality, I don't think that seasonality is as much of a problem with the healthcare industry as it is with other industries that are really highly seasonal. For example, with health coaching now, we do have a number of health coaches that we work with. It's a slightly different story because, they are a little bit more subject to seasonality, and equally they've also been hit harder by COVID equally. But actually the healthcare industry, I think, is very blessed with consistency within reason. Yeah.
Now, is there anything in specific you'd like to share, like a tactic that's a favorite of yours, or maybe some thoughts?
Oh my goodness. I wouldn't talk about tactics as such. I should have put this on silent. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend any specific tactic, because I think one of the main problems with the marketing, and particularly the digital marketing industry, is that there are all these strategies and tactics and hard and fast rules that are being sold either as part of courses or whatever, that are really even giving the marketing industry a bad rap, because as you and I know, there are too many exceptions for me to sit here and state that this strategy is going to work for everyone. So I wouldn't even do that, to be honest. What I will say is, and I know that I've been saying it throughout, what I will say is look at your customer acquisition and your monetization as a whole. And that is really the one thing that, in my opinion, is going to make a difference to any business, whether you're a restaurant or you're a dentist or you are, I don't know, a relationship coach. I think that really looking at your, again, customer acquisition and monetization as a whole, holistically, is going to make a huge difference. So one thing that you can start doing differently this year, if you haven't been doing it, is approaching things this way.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Marilisa. I saw on your website you have a free masterclass for people who want to take a look into Facebook ads. Would you mind if I share that link below?
No, absolutely. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm also going to share Marilisa's website and her LinkedIn page in case if any one of you wants to reach out to her and ask any questions around Facebook or Instagram ads. I hope that's fine, Marilisa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, so this was our time for today. Marilisa shared a lot of tangible things around Facebook ads and how to start and nailing your copy, creative, and targeting, and also how to take care of customer handling. Thank you for your time, Marilisa, today.
Thank you for having me.
Have a nice day, everyone. Goodbye.